Welcome to this tutorial where I'm going to now show you two alternatives, examples of throwing the dice, simulating that throw of a dice. So in this first example we're going to make a dice that you can see three different numbers that are random, and if I throw that dice I get a different number on each side, and you can see the most prominent one in the middle. And finally the other alternative is this version where when I roll the dice you get the dots, and it's a different type of dice, but you get the same visual effect basically. So let's get started. I'll show you the first one here. What I'll do is I will show first of all the headings and grid lines, and I'm going to move the shape away so we can look at those formulas. I'll just put it over there and I will zoom in. I've also put, I need to see the formula bar as well, and now I have created a series of numbers down here which I'm now going to reveal for you. I'm going to make those darker so we can look at them. So the great thing about Excel is when you use formulas is you can always hide them, and there's different ways of hiding them. And what I had done previously was I made these white, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So to get that effect, what we need to do is we're going to work in some cells up here, and you can see that I've merged some. So I've merged two cells there and two cells there and one there. So I'll do it beside, and you can see that I've started with in the middle this main number here as a rand between, which you would have used already. You need to use a range of cells, so I've used here a series of 3 by 3, so it's 9 cells, and I've also formatted the columns. So I've just selected 3 columns, and the width of those columns I've made 30 pixels, and you'll see that of course you may have to insert some rows above your snakes and ladders board. We don't want it right up against the border, we do want it down a little bit. So if you haven't got the space, you can just, would have shown you this before, you can just select a row by clicking on the row number over here and then going right click and selecting insert, and that selects a row for you if you need to do that. So I'll just undo that. So that's what I've done. Now let me just zoom in a little bit more. So let's have a closer look at what I'm doing here. The other thing that you might want to do is you can select your board, those columns, and just right click and you can hide them. Now it just gives you something, a lesser distraction, gives you more of the board I guess. And to reveal those again, you just select those two columns, right click and then unhide them. So it can just declutter your workspace while you're doing this. Alright, and now I've made it more challenging for myself. So just, you can see what I did there, I just went up and widen that. Anyway, let's hide those again. And first of all we need to start with the rand between formula, and for that we're going to need 4 cells, and you need to have formatted those cells. Now I've chosen 30 pixels for my width and 30 pixels for my rows. So choose which ones you're going to use. Now you might find it easier if you come up to home, and we don't actually need to use home, we can just do a right click format and let's put in some borders, and that might just help you with you working out these spaces so you know what you're working with. Not necessary, it's up to you. So we need to start with these 4 cells. So by selecting them, then we go right click, format, and we will select from alignment, the alignment tab there, you will select merge cells and then go OK. Now of course we need that random number, and I'll just click over here, and if you remember it equals rand between, and the numbers 1 to 6 is the range. So we just type that equals rand between, and then the range of between 1 and 6. So the bottom number is 1 and the top number is 6. And of course that's a very small number, so what we can do then is go to the home ribbon and we can make that larger, and we can also center it in that dice. So whatever size you want to make it, whatever color you want to make it, that's up to you, because this is, again, this is your Snakes and Ladders board game and it's entirely up to you. So we've centered it this way. We also need to center it that way, so go like that. And the next formula we're going to do is this one here. So first of all, what we need to do is to merge these two cells, just like I did over here. We'll merge those two. So format and merge cells under the alignment tab there and go OK. Then we want to merge these two. Right click, format cells, and again merge cells and OK. So now we've got a space to put our formulas. We won't need this one down the bottom. So later on we will get rid of those lines, but for now this is what we need. So we're going to now do a formula you haven't used before, and that is the VLOOKUP. Now a VLOOKUP is basically a vertical lookup, and it's looking up, first of all it looks up a value, and in this case it's this cell here. Well, in terms of this dice, it's cell M3, which is over here, but we're going to be writing this formula based on this cell, which we'll find out what the value, what reference that is in a moment. And then it's going to look up a table array. Now I've already created this table, but I'm going to create a new one just to show you the theory behind that. But that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be looking up then vertically a number in this table, and then we're going to look at the index column, which in this case is the second column. So there's 3 columns altogether, and we'll look up the second column. So first of all we'll look up this first column here, in this case M column, and we'll be looking for, in this case, the number 6. So we'll go down to number 6, and then we'll be looking at the second column, and that would make this a value of 1. And then we go to the range lookup, we just say false. So let's just press enter there, and let's create our table of reference. So we need to start with the numbers of 1 to 6, so we can use a formula, or we can just, in this case, just type in those numbers. So we've got our numbers of 1 to 6, which means that's our first roll. So that's going to be this main random number is going to be a number between 1 to 6. And then what we're going to say is, if that's a 1, what do we want this number to be? Or what do we want this number in cell reference R2 to equal? So in that case, let's say we want it to equal a 2, and then we'll go down to 3, and we'll put those numbers down like so far. So 5, 6, and then of course we get down to 1. And we'll just quite simply put in a 3 and 4, 5, 6, 1, 2. So there is our range. Now this is our lookup range. So what we can do next is actually give this table array a name, and we just select those cells, so from wherever 1 is down to that final number of a 2, and we come up here where you can, this is what we call the name box, and we give it a name. So I've already called my other range roll, so I might call this one roll 2. So it's up to you what you call it. Roll would be a good name. In this case I'm giving it a name of roll 2, and you just press enter and you can click away, and then if I select those again you'll see that that is called roll 2. This range here is called roll. So let's do this formula together. We know that all formulas in Excel start with equals, so we say that this cell equals, and it's going to equal the lookup. And the lookup value is going to be looking at this value here, so we can just click in that cell and then comma, and the table array is called roll 2, comma, the index is that second column, and then finally we just say false. Oops. We close our brackets and press enter. And now if we roll that dice, or if you press F9 on your keyboard, you'll see that it's changing. So where that's a 5, so if this column is a 5, that number is going to be a 6. So what we want to do now is to format that. So let's align that. Let's go to our home ribbon and center align that. And in fact, I'm actually we'll move it over later, but we can reposition it and we can resize it as well. We don't want it we actually don't want it as large as this number here, because it's supposed to give the visual effect of a 3D dice. The next formula is going to be very much the same, so it's going to be another VLOOKUP. So let's go through that together. We start with this cell equals, and we're using the VLOOKUP function. And we need the open bracket, and it is prompting us. So the lookup value is going to be the same as before. And then we need a comma, and the table array we called row 2, comma. And this time we're going to look up the index column 3, comma, and then just say false, and then close your bracket and press enter. So let's roll that dice, and each time you'll see that it is changing. So where this column here is a 4, we're going to have a value of 5 and 6 and so on. Now you could of course make those numbers any way you want, but that solves our problem, and that will work quite nicely. So let's align this. So let's go to home ribbon and center align that. Let's remove those border lines, right click, format the cells, and let's go to border and remove those. So we'll say no lines, and let's bring back our dice. Reveal these. So let's go unhide, and it should unhide all of them. Yes, it has. There we go. So I've unhid those. Let's make those wider again. What do we have at about 60? And I will zoom out. What did I do with my cube? There it is. And I can put my cube over top, just like you did with the earlier experiment. You can have a duplicate of that. So of course I've actually formatted the size of these cells differently. You'll see that the value of 4 there is a bit small and it's a bit high. So what I'm just going to do now is just move that over like so, and I'm going to select that. I'm going to make it larger, about like that, and I want to bring it down. So we can bring it right down like that, and let's see how that looks. And that's probably too low. It can be a bit tricky. Oh, actually not too bad. You can line it up that way. Now what you found with what I can see with the 3 there is that it's not centered on that side, which isn't very desirable, and it's tricky. If we leave the dice where it is, it can actually be a little bit tricky, and I can resize that. It can be a bit tricky trying to reposition those numbers. And I'm just going to click in a cell next to the cell that has the value of 3 there, and I'm just going to use my arrow on my keyboard to move into place. And then I'm going to very carefully just do a right click on that cell if it lets me. And it's not going to let me. I'm going to have to actually move that away. So I'm going to do a right click on that cell and go to alignment, and there is an option there to indent. So I'm going to actually, in this case, I'm going to indent it 2, and let's see what happens. You can see it's moved it over a little bit more. Let's see what happens if I indent that to, I don't know why that keeps going over there, indent it 3 and go OK. Let's put our dice back and see what we can achieve there. And there you go. The next thing is you want to tidy up your board. So you want 2 of these dice, you just copy it and you paste it. Line them up, make sure they're formatted how you like them. Your range can be hidden, so we'll make that white now so you can't see them. We can go up and hide our formula heading and grid lines, click away, and then you're back to very similar to your original experiment, but you've got another way of doing the dice. Later on I'll show you how to put in a function a macro which will roll the dice for you. Of course, I would have shown you in the earlier video that you can press F9 on your keyboard. Some of you may not get that far as creating the macro, so let's see how you go. The next method I mentioned before is to have dice like so. Now what I'm going to do here is show you how you can reveal the formulas. What I've done here, these are all, I need to show you the formula bar so you can see what's happening here. I'm going to have a look at this formula. When I've double clicked on it there, you can see a whole load of gobbledygook. What I have done is formatted all these cells as wingdings, and that may not make sense to you at the moment, but I have that cell selected, and if I go up to the home ribbon, you can see that the font I've used is a wingding. Alright, and then I know that an L is a dot. So that's how that works. What I'm going to show you now will help you to do this. Go up to File on your menu, go down to Options. Now, apologies if you're using a Mac. I'm not familiar with how you access options on a Mac. So to those students, let's come over here to Advanced. Now, so it will be possible if you have a Mac computer. I'm just not sure where you find this, but you're looking for advanced options and you're looking for display options for this worksheet. What I'm going to do here is show formulas in cells instead of calculated results. So I'll click on that and go OK, and let's zoom in on that. So as I said, that looks like a whole heap of gobbledygook. So what I'm going to do for you right now is change this font to something we can read. Let's make it Calibri. That way you can see it. And what I'm going to also do is to widen this. Right. So this is what we're doing. We're asking a question. We always start a formula with an equals, and we're going to do a logical test. So we're saying if, and then it's asking us for a logical test. We want two things to happen. We want to check both of these. So we say and. So we're saying is 05, now 05 is over here. I've got a value down here. You can't see at the moment because I've actually made it white. And what is down there in 05 is a ran between 1 and 6. And you'll be familiar with that formula. So we're saying if and 05 is greater than 2, greater than or equal to 2, and 05 is less than and equal to 6, then we want to display the, now this is what we refer to as text or script, and because it is script, it's the letter L in this case, we need to encase it in quotation marks. So what I've got there is a quotation mark, L, quotation mark, comma, and then I've just got 2 quotation marks. The result of the 2 quotation marks means no characters, so no text whatsoever. But that's the value that we want there. It's like putting in a space. So we don't want to show any characters at all there. So going back down to here now, this is the cell that we were looking at. I'll actually change that for you to automatic so you can see that formula there. So it's a ran between 1 to 6 as I mentioned before. Now I'm just going to bring this up and I'm going to leave these formulas there for you. It depends where on your board what reference you use in these formulas. So what you need to do is to understand first of all, and this is why it's this particular type of dice is more advanced. It's an alternative dice if you want to get into more formulas, and if you've done some programming, this will make a lot more sense to you. But I'm just going to go through each of these formulas and explain them. But when you do it in your spreadsheet for your game, you will very likely have to change these references depending on where you put your values. So you need to know what each of these is referring to. So let's look at the next one here. This cell is asking if 05, and that's that reference again where that random number is, if it equals the value of 6, then we want an L in this case. Remember, the L is actually a wingding character. In wingding, that's actually going to be like a big black dot. So remember, at the moment we are using Calibri, and it's an L. It'll look like an L. But when we change the format of the cell to be a font which is a wingding, it will show that big black dot. If it is true, if this statement is true, it will. So that's what we're trying to do there. Let's look at the next one. In this cell, we're saying if and, so if that value is greater than and equal to 4, and it's less than or equal to 6, then we want to show that big black dot. Otherwise, we don't want to show anything at all. So in other words, you'll only have a dot there if it's a 4 or a 6. Let's go and have a look up here. So this one here, if 05 is a 1, or 05 is a 3, or 05 is a 5, then we want to see the big black dot. Otherwise, we don't want to see anything at all. And that's how each of these formulas work. So let's go back now to the other view. So I'll go to Options, File, Options, Advanced, and I'm going to the Display options for this workbook. And I'm going to remove Show Formulas in Cell instead of their calculated results and go OK. Remember, at the moment these are Calibri. If I change those to wingdings, we will see those black dots. Wingdings, there are wingdings, there we go. And of course you need to format the columns because they're pretty wide at the moment. So I'll make them smaller. And that's how that works. And remember, they're based on whatever this value is. Okay, so I'm going to leave up here for you. Oh, there's another one here. Let's have a look at that. So there's another rand between here. So ideally we don't want to see the rand between number. You would hide them, or you make them white, or whatever colour of your background, or you cover them so that you can't see them. I've also changed the shading in these cells. So I haven't put a shape on top of them like I did in the earlier examples. What I have done is I've done a right click and I've selected those 6 of the 9 cells. I've right clicked, Format, and I've gone to Fill, and I filled it with that, in this case a blue, and the other one I filled it with a red. So another way of looking at it, you can also put in a pattern style if that's what you want to do it. I think the plain is better myself, but it is entirely up to you. You can also change the size of those dots. So again, there are many options, and let's roll that dice and see how that looks. So I hope you enjoyed that. There's 2 alternatives there. This one probably is the more difficult, more challenging, and I will put an example of those formulas into your book for you. So that you can actually reference those, or you can actually, if you don't have access to the book, you can rewind the video to where I show you those formulas, and you can work from that. So the next thing I wanted to show you is, at the moment you know that you can press F9 and that will recalculate everything on the sheet. I want to show you now how you can create a button which is actually connected to a macro, which will enable you to click that button and then it will effectively roll the dice. So to be able to do this, you need to have the developer ribbon. Now again, I apologize, I can't show you how to do that on a Mac. it could very well be the same process. What we want to do is go to customize the ribbon. So under any of these ribbons, if you do a right click, you should be able to choose customize ribbon. Over here we can actually see the main tab. Oh, that's what we want. The main tab's over here, and what you need to make sure is ticked is this developer one. So if I deselect that and go OK, you can no longer see the developer across the top. So if I go back in there, I want to, under main tabs, I want to make sure that I can see the developer tab, and there it is. You need to then go into design mode. Now I'm just going to pin that up there to make that a little bit, it's a bit annoying at the moment. And we want to insert a active control, and that is a command button. So we just select that and then draw your button wherever you want to put it. Then we need to right click it and go to the properties of it. Now in the property we can change the color of it, so the background color for example. Now there are system and there are also a palette, so I would suggest you select a palette and choose a color that you like. Now at the moment the name of it is command button 2, and the caption is what we need to change here. So we don't generally change the name of it, but we do change the caption in this case. So I might just call that roll, or capital letters. And then we can just close that. The next thing is we need to apply an action to that action button. So we do a right click and go to view code, and it already knows the name of this button. We didn't change it, which makes it really easy, and all you need to type is calculate and then close that, or you can run it even from here, and it should keep running and it will randomly generate those numbers, and then these spreadsheet formulas will then change accordingly. So we can close that and you're ready to go. Your spreadsheet is done, and you can just remove. Now I'm just going to remove that for a moment because I don't need it anymore, and I don't want to see these anymore, for example. So I can hide those, and I don't need to view my formula bar, my headings, or my grid lines. And of course I want it a bit smaller so I can fit it all on my sheet, and you're done. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. There are 2 alternative dice that you could use for your game, and I hope you enjoyed it.